hope everybody's having a good day so far today. I've refreshed myself and woke up and ate and all that good jazz. We're going to get into a continuation of the my story video yesterday or live. If you haven't watched that, that's posted. I did post it with a trigger warning because it's about sexual abuse. So, trigger warning with this video also. The sun's kind of coming in the window, so maybe if I kind of come over here a little bit, it's a little bit better. Okay. So I went through a pretty good amount of the history of my sexual abuse. So we're not going to actually talk about all the experiences today. I want to touch on where at least the final experiences led me to. So I'm going to say my true awakening and healing really started back when my son was first taken from me. It was June of 2023, or I mean 2013, sorry. He was 2.5, and I was 30. Well, I think I had just turned 30. Yeah. Nonetheless, I was either 29 or 30. And it was the first time in my life that I had ever lived on my own. Now, I moved out of my mother's house when I was 16, almost 17. But I had never lived by myself. I was always living with somebody else. And so just that in itself it brought out a lot of things that I didn't realize about myself. And at that time, I went into a very deep, dark place for a while. And the end of 2014, going into 2015, I really pulled myself out of it. I was buying my first camper. I was working a full-time job. The job was going very well. That situation in itself is a whole nother story, but it was a lot of those things that I went through in between that time that allowed me to really know who I was, because I had never spent any time alone. I was always being what I thought everybody else wanted me to be, instead of being who I naturally am. Then, as I went further on in life, little things started being brought to my attention by other people that I didn't realize about myself. One of those times happened in 2016 when I was let go from a job. And I couldn't understand why, because I was good at that job. I had gotten several compliments on how good and detailed of a worker I was. And I was given a male coworker a ride home one day. And I think it was that same day, but it might have been a different day where I don't really remember how that played out. But I was giving him a ride home, and I said, I was telling him I just don't understand And he said, don't you realize that all the other girls that we work with are intimidated by you? I was like, what do you mean? He was like, well, you've only been here 3 weeks and you already do better work than they do. So little things like that happened throughout my life made me realize that a lot of things that throughout my life I had been taught were wrong about me. The reason those instances happened is because people saw things in me that they didn't have in themselves. And one of those major things is me being so honest and speaking so bluntly. And, even though I may be polite to you, I'm not going to go above and beyond. I'm not going to go out of my way to sugarcoat anything. If I don't want to interact with you, you're going to be able to feel it off my energy that I don't really want to be standing there talking to you. And I'm going to give as little energy as possible to the conversation because of a number of numerous reasons why that may be. Well, then, as my healing journey progressed and my experiences with men progressed, that was when a lot of those things happened, is when I realized how truly naive I was. I literally believed anything anybody told me. I had no reason to not believe it, but in reality I did, but I just didn't know those reasons yet. And so, because of my lack of boundaries, my lack of knowledge, my people pleasing personality, because up until I was 30, I was a people pleaser to the point to where I was hurting myself. And nobody in my life, other than maybe my grandparents, have ever made me feel like I was deserving of love or time or attention. So I sought that so much so that I was willing to take it from anywhere, even if I knew that it wasn't real, even if I knew that it wasn't authentic. I would keep myself in the company of people just so that I didn't have to be alone. And that's how I ended up in a lot of the situations that made those things happen or allowed those things to happen in my life. I was either somewhere I shouldn't have been, around people I shouldn't have been around, so on and so forth. And that's so, reaching that pivotal point goes back a little bit to what we talked about yesterday about the self-love and the self-forgiveness. When you feel that way your entire life, like everything is your fault, there's all these things wrong with you, you literally have to start to reparent yourself, because you were made into somebody that you aren't, because you're filling everybody else's wants and needs and expectations of you instead of your own. So you're not your own person. You're a people person. And that's a people pleaser. And for a long time, I used to say, oh, well, that's just who I am. Or, it's reciprocal. somebody's giving me a place to live and I cook and clean in exchange for a place to live type thing. You know, there are certain circumstances and certain situations where, you know, it is a give and take. Even if it's not a relationship give and take. It's an energy exchange. That kind of goes back to a little bit of what we talked about earlier today in the frequency video. You know, I talk about it all the time, energy cords and exchanging energy with other people. Uh, that's why a lot of times it's better to be secluded than to surround yourself with people that either are not like-minded, they don't have good intentions, or you don't know what kind of intentions they have because you can't believe anything that they say. And 9 times out of 10, a person like that doesn't have good intentions. They're vague and repetitive, and they can't truly sit down and have a conversation because you always end up talking about the same stuff because that's the stuff that they've programmed, that they're programmed to say. So you really have to be careful with that because our own woundedness and our own lack of self-knowledge, whether those beliefs are due to abuse, neglect, or just lack of knowledge, we have to teach ourselves different. We have to find out who we are without all the outside influence. And we have to learn to love ourselves. Because as long as you don't love yourself, you're going to be seeking that love from outside sources. And that's different for everybody what those outside sources are. Whether it's intimacy, sex, drugs, music, alcohol, whatever it is. You know, shopping, eating, you know, whatever gets those happy hormones going. Because we lack that self-love, we lack that self-forgiveness, we lack that self-understanding. Because at least in America, you know, the more I learn, I would be happy to move out of the United States. There are plenty of other countries that are way better than America. And I'm not ashamed to say that, you know, but that's because America has become ruled by crime and corruption and abuse and neglect and poverty. And we should, anyways, this is not a political channel and I'm not going to talk politics, but there's better out there as far as society that encourages instead of hinders your personal health, your personal well-being. There's in other societies and other cultures, they encourage it. They want you to shine. Because when we shine from the inside, instead of somebody shining a light from the outside, it's completely different. We not only does, okay, so you've come to the point where you realize you need all these things. And then you come to the point you see where all these things stem from. Whether it's sexual abuse, whether it's neglect, whether it's emotional abuse, whatever it is, you know, mostly it's inner child stuff, you know, which contributes to all these lacks of lack of supervision, you know, lack of parenting in general. You know, a lot of us are forced to kind of grow up on our own. You know, we're thrown a lot of responsibility at a young age and so we don't go through the normal growth patterns. We don't experience things to be able. One of them is coping skills, how to cope with the emotions. That is something that has always been a struggle for me. Um, More now than ever, because I'm getting put in situations that I'm not familiar with. And, but nonetheless, you've reached this point where you've looked back and you've seen what happened that caused all these feelings and crap that you're dealing with. And then you see how the trickle effect happened, and how not only did it affect one thing, it affected everything. And it can be a very exhausting process, because then that's when the accountability comes in. And at some point, as grown-ups, we have to learn to accept accountability for whether it was just the lack of knowledge. You might have done everything right as far as what you knew to do. Like, you didn't know any better, right? You did the best you could with the knowledge that you had at the time. Okay. But then we want to get to the point to where we're working with different knowledge. It's like, okay, we've tried all this stuff in the past and it didn't work. So what do we need to do to make it work? Because if not, depending on the level of your issues, it's going to take some people more time than others. Some people had a great childhood. Some people don't have a lot of abuse and trauma that they have to heal from. And that's great for them. I don't wish it on my worst enemy. But then there are some of us that went through a lot of it and had nobody there to tell us how to get through it. And so that's about accountability. That, nobody's going to save me from myself. Trust me. I mean, I've called suicide hotlines. I've called family members. I've called friends. They don't even want to give you their time, let alone any effort to help you. That's how the majority of the world is. You're on your own. And that's a sad reality. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that there aren't systems and programs out there, but not everybody has access to that kind of stuff. Copper, that's enough. And then some people that do have access to it are still denied it. I can't tell you how many times I've been turned away from people, places, and, programs that were supposed to be there to help people. And especially within the last 2 years, I've been turned away from pretty much everywhere I've went. There was a few places that actually helped me. But, it's sad that that's the world that we live in. And that's why so many of us struggle to recover and heal from the abuse, is because we don't know how. We get stuck in that fight or flight, and it still happens to me today. I don't think it's something that we can't ever stop healing. Once it starts, it never stops. Because things just keep happening that you have to heal from, and you have to learn from and grow and, adapt to. When I was on the road, maybe this is a good example. I only ate once a day. And it was usually, between like 12 and 2. I might have a piece of fruit or, some kind of little gummies or snack or something like that, granola bar, at some point during the day. But as far as like a meal, I only ate once a day. And, the rest of the time I was doing outdoorsy stuff, hiking, taking pictures, watching animals, listening to nature. I didn't have a hard time meditating. Now, when I was in the woods, now when you're in a campground and stuff, it's different. But it's easier to adapt when you don't have all the things around you bombarding your brain. And so if you think of that from an internal perspective, we have all this stuff inside of us that we never deal with, we never get away from, we never process it. We never try to understand it. We never try to make something out of it. We just want to pretend like it didn't happen. Like that hurt in whatever way, literally, figuratively, spiritually, emotionally, it hurt. I don't want to deal with it. Just sweep it under the rug and pretend like it never happened. But I don't know about for anybody else, but trying to do that led me down a bitter road because I was carrying around a lot of hurt and burden for no reason. Sure, it happened. But the people that did those things to me, they're not burdened. Darling, that's enough. They're out there living their lives pretending like it never happened. And I tried for a long time to pretend like those things didn't happen. But when it's all said and done, they did happen. And so it doesn't do any good to keep reliving it. And so then that's what pushed me even further, getting that mindset of it's my job to do. It's not a job that anybody else is going to do for me. And, that's a really hard thing to do. Especially when there's so much and you don't even know where to start. Because, like, think of it like when you've got a 3-bedroom, two bath house that's needs a total done over throughout the whole house. It can get so overwhelming that it's like, that's how hoarder situations start. Like it gets so overwhelming that you just don't do anything. Well, of course, the longer you live in the house, the dirtier it's going to get. And it can lead, that type of mental chaos can lead to destruction. Because people sit and, I'm guilty of it. Where, you just sit and waste your life away. Waiting for something to change. Waiting for that pain to go away. It doesn't ever go away. It doesn't. It's one of those things where you have to turn it into a positive. Learn something from it. Whatever that is, whether that means, distancing yourself from people until you truly know who they are, whether that means, going inside of yourself and forgiving yourself for the things that the situations that you put yourself in that allowed whatever to happen. Just pick a place and start doing your research. No matter what it is, whether it's mommy issues, daddy issues, codependency issues. That's where I started, really, was with my codependency. And I have a codependency book. I'm going to get out and pull some of my books out, and we're really going to start diving deep into stuff like this. And I like having the books because I can give you personal experience. I can give you like advice on how what I'm dealing with, what I've dealt with in the past, and the way I did it. But, you know, a lot of the books that I have are written by like doctors and professionals, and it can just give you a different perspective. You know, sometimes I can say it better than they can, sometimes they can say it better than me. That's just the way of the world. But that's where I started, was with my codependency. And my codependency led me to my mommy and daddy issues. And so it's a rabbit hole. It's a rabbit hole. It's not going to be easy. But for me, and there's a lot of other things that happened in my life besides just the sexual assault. That's just something that had been reoccurring in my life up until just a couple years ago. And hence the reason why I had to go into hermit mode. That's why I went off grid. That's why I went on the road. You know, it was this, of course, I didn't plan on ending up in this situation. But, you know, all I can do is hope for the best and make the best use of my time as possible. And working on our inner selves so that when we do get through the trial or tribulation or whatever it is that we're going through at each particular time, that we're a better person at the end of it than we were when it started. And be doing it out of self-love and not out of obligation. Because we want to, if we can't love ourselves, how can we expect anybody else to be able to love us? Once you get so far into the healing journey, you don't care. You have to get that duck feather mentality to where that it can just roll right off your back, to where you don't care. It's like, well, I don't care that you're upset that I won't sleep with you. I don't care that you're upset that I don't want to sit here and have bullshit conversation for you when I can be given this time to myself. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'd rather give that love to myself in whatever shape that is. But to know what that is, you have to do, you got to do the work. What makes you happy? How do you show yourself love? For me, it's something as simple as, taking care of my feet. I have farmer girl feet. I walk around barefoot a lot. So, over the last couple years, I've really tried to take better care of my feet. And, that's a way that I love on myself. Taking care of my body, because nobody's going to do it for us. And the true health comes from the inside. But the outer world, all the hurt, all the distraction, all the chaos, all the noise distracts us from it. When life was simpler, life was better. That is not bullshit. And we can have it still today. When my life is simple, it's better. I don't need a bunch of outside stuff to live my life. And neither do you. Neither does anybody. We literally waste our lives away on things that don't even matter, instead of, saving our souls. And I don't mean that in a religious aspect. I mean that as in, we are energy. And our power comes from within. And if that machine is broken, if that machine is out of alignment, it's not going to work properly. I'm not by far saying that mine is in alignment, because it's not. But it's something that you have to work on. If you don't start somewhere, it's never going to happen. And that's what led me in the codependency and doing all that and learning about You know, you have to heal the internal to be able to heal the external. That was a huge pivotal moment for me. And that's when I got into the yoga. That's when I got into the chakras and the herbal medicine. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've always been kind of like that hippie gypsy chick. Like, I've never been into politics. I've never liked going to the doctor. I've never liked taking medicine. There was a time in my life when I was 26 years old, I was taking 9 different medications a day. 9 different ones. I still hated my life. I still hated myself. I felt like nobody loved me. Nobody gave a damn about me. I didn't even care if I existed. I didn't. And then I got pregnant with my son. And I'm not even going to touch on that story today because that is literally like a whole day interview of talking about that situation. But it's all a process. And especially when we have literally a world of knowledge at our fingertips, there's no excuse. And so diving down the rabbit hole of the chakras for me was a very pivotal point because, you know, it's like picking a doctor's brain and finding out all the secrets that have been hidden from us for so long. And don't think it was on accident. It wasn't. This coming up year, 2025, is going to be the literal reset. And the more of us that are ready to reset, the smoother it's going to go. I know that's kind of jumping onto a different topic, but it just popped into my head. It's everywhere. It's all over online. They're talking about it in numerology. They're talking about it in astrology. They're even talking about it in biblical proportions. It's coming. And it's all about, it's the revolution of love. Ow, I didn't mean to do that. Dang. I went to scratch my nose and had my lighter in my hand. It's like a fidget spinner for me. I think it was the William Donahue guy was talking about Uranus and Gaia had a baby, and that's Saturn. And he was talking about the age of Aquarius and Venus coming in. And anyways, I can get all kind of confused and tripping all over my words talking about that stuff because it's not necessarily an area where I am highly versed. You know what I'm saying? So, but I think I touched on it yesterday when I think it was during the daily devotional video, but nonetheless, you know, we are it was the frequency video. That's what it was. You know, I've used it as an example before. You know, how when there's a full moon or just the moon cycles in general, you know, and how they affect our body. Well, even back before biblical times, you know, you go back to Egypt or, Greece, you know, people, places, and times as those, they've always used astrology. And in reality, their knowledge was more than ours. It surpassed us on a lot of levels. You know, and for a long time, they tried to say that, you know, those hieroglyphics and stuff like that that they were finding, that they were just stories. Well, if you've noticed, especially the last couple years, uh, a lot more details about stuff like that are coming out, to where they've literally they can prove where, they've been lying to us this whole time. And I talked about it yesterday too, the different parts of the Bible that they've taken out of things that they didn't want us to know, like the book of Enoch, the Gospel of Mary. There's a bunch of other ones. Those are just the ones that I'm most familiar with at this point. But, that's just another example of how, we need to educate ourselves so that we can be ready. History repeats itself. It does it over and over and over and over and over and over and over. And it's because we keep getting it wrong. Just like in our personal lives, as a whole, we keep getting it wrong. And we stay in our carnal mind instead of our Christ conscious mind. And they use all these, if you take it a level deeper to the spiritual realm, the demonic realm uses things like abuse and neglect and, lack of self-love and, self-criticism and all those things against us. Because the demonic realm doesn't want us to succeed. Because when we succeed, he loses control. It's a scale. And as soon as there's more of us than there are of them, it's going to tip that scale on a massive world level. We are in the time of Aquarius. We've been in the time of Aquarius since 2010. And that's all proven in constellations. That William Donahue guy, dude, I cannot push that name enough. He gives it all to you. He gives you all different perspective, the scientific, the biblical, the otherwise. He really lays it out there. But it's all there. But they literally rewrote our history books and programmed us to believe something completely different. And all the people that y'all been laughing at, calling them conspiracy theorists, well, guess what? Most of those conspiracies are coming out now to where they were right the whole time. So that's already showing how the scales are starting to tip. Those that were those that were last will become first. The wealth of the righteous will be restored. It doesn't matter how you want to say it. It's a reset. Because the more we talk about stuff like this and the more we come together and see that it's more. It's all of it. It's not just one thing. It's not just your beliefs and their beliefs and my beliefs and his beliefs and her beliefs. It's not just one thing. It's all of it. It's all of it. And they are literally, for so long, the demonic realm held control. And all those things are starting to be exposed. And it's so, because of that, it's so, getting back to the whole, getting back to it. That's why it's so important for us to do this healing work. To be able to lead with love. Whether you agree or disagree with somebody on anything, lead with love. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. Even though a lot of them, especially nowadays, they know what they're doing. Because that realm of knowledge is for good and evil. It's available to all of us. I think I brought it up yesterday. Let me say that differently. The devil knows you. The demonic realm knows you just as well as the heavenly realm. They're angels too. They have access to all the same information. They're just bad angels. There's light and dark in all of us. We are all angels. We are all star beings. I mean, unless you're a non-role character or whatever. And then I mean, those of the people that are on my track, you got the dark realm and you got the light realm. And I don't care what anybody says. Harry Potter is a perfect depiction of that. In those movies, that's what she's talking about. They're depicting that right in front of your eyes. In school, they had 4 houses, right? You had the 2 houses that were shady, and you had the 2 houses that weren't shady, right? You had the professors that were shady. You had the professors that were great. You get what I'm saying? And Harry Potter is just one of my favorites. I love Harry Potter. I don't care what anybody says. They talk about it being demonic. Whatever, man. The shit that they have on public television is demonic these days. So, the things like that is what opened my eyes to the spirit realm to see that it's real. I was so naive and so oblivious for so long that if I wouldn't have been exposed to those things periodically over time, I would have stayed stuck in that box. So certain people, places, and things are trying to wake us up. We just don't know that's what they're doing. And I'm 41 on the timer. That's why it's so getting back to, to kind of sum it all up. Just pick something. What is something about you that hurts? We all have a big list. You don't even have to write it down. Just pick one. And then go back and find the root of that hurt so that you can rip it out and start to repair that wound. I know it's hard. We don't like to relive those things. And as we learned yesterday during my video, during the live, there's a lot of them that our mind just naturally blocks out over time. And above all else, I want to encourage self-love and self-forgiveness. Yeah, it may have been our fault. That we allowed certain things to happen or, fill it, whatever it, make it fit your situation, but forgive yourself and take that first step toward healing that hurt instead of just letting it sit and marinate and steal your joy, because that's what it does. It robs you of who you are. It turns you into somebody that's not you. And you walk around carrying all that hurt instead of, carrying some happiness. Sure, there's a lot of things about my life right now that don't make me happy. It doesn't contribute to my happiness. But I still have a lot to be thankful for and happy about because of things that I've overcome. And to some, it may not seem like much, but to me, it's a lot. Before I started doing these videos, even though, I've never really had that many viewers, just getting it out and talking about it and sharing the little bit that I've learned has helped me so much. It was 44:11 on the timer. Because I can go back to older videos and watch and be like, wow, I've changed a lot even just since then. Physically, emotionally, spiritually, I've changed a lot. I've healed several things. I'm not going to say a lot, but several. I've got a ways to go. None of us are ever done. It's never done. We're constantly growing and evolving and healing. If you're if you're living and not just coasting through life. All right, it's 45 seconds on the or minutes on the dot. So I'm going to stop there because I could jabber on forever. Thank you for whoever watches this later on. I hope that something that I've said has either encouraged you, educated you, inspired you, whatever. I hope that it helps at least one person. And as always, be grateful for what you have, the big, the small, and the blessings yet to come. If you see a need out there today, tomorrow, next week, if there's any possible way that you can fill that need, please do so. You may not only better their day, but you could possibly change their life, and you never know the impact it could have on yours. Be blessed, find peace, and I'll see you next time.